Hi, everybody. This is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame. I've been away for a while. I was doing a little bit of traveling, but most importantly, I was working on my latest book, which is called Making Pictures, Developing a Personal Visual Workflow. And it's coming out by a publisher called Rocky Nook, and it's going to be out in November and December. And it's basically the principles that I teach in my workshop and my other classes, and some of the knowledge that I share here in these YouTube videos. So it's available for pre-sale now, and I'll have a link below in the notes. So if you're interested in buying it and reading it, you can pre-order it today, and it will be out very, very soon. Now, while I was in San Francisco, I attended the StreetFotoSF Street Photography Festival, and I took part in basically this critique session in which we evaluated street photography, and we judged it and chose the best three images that were submitted by people not only in attendance to the event, but people from all over the world. And we saw some really good images, but one of the things that stood out was the lack of humanity in a lot of the photographs. And I'll explain that in a minute, but let me just say that a lot of the photographs either fell into two pools. One, they were really carefully composed. Everything was had its place, and compositionally it was great. And other shots, it looked like it was sloppily composed, as if someone really wasn't paying attention. But regardless of where the images fell, at either extreme or anywhere in the middle, one of the things that we were longing for as judges was to see images that reflected something about what it means to be human. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges that we face as street photographers, is being sensitive and being aware of such moments when they happen, because they can really be the heart of a really good street photograph. But it takes a lot of skill and talent, not only to see it, but also to be able to react well enough with your camera in order to capture it. I chose three images that I think really capture the essence of what I'm trying to say here. So let's take a look. Okay, here we have an image by Karsten H. This was created with a Nikon D5100 at 1/250th of a second, f5, ISO 1600. So here we have a shot in Istanbul of a barber shop. And I've always had an affinity for barbershops from as long ago as when I was a little kid. And occasionally I have photographed in barbershops, and I really enjoy the connection that people have within the barbershop. Not only the barber and their customers, but also the people who are sitting there waiting to get their haircut. And this is a really interesting moment here. We have this kid reacting to this young fellow here getting his haircut, and he has this sort of bemused, sort of nervous look on his face as he's watching someone who I'm going to assume was like his brother or a sibling that is getting their haircut. And it doesn't look like he's in full approval of what's happening there, as if, oh my God, I'm going to be next. And I like that reaction. I like the expression on the kid's face. Also, the guy in the foreground who's getting his haircut, who seems to be sort of bemused by the kid's reaction. We have the barbers. We actually have two barbers here, each of which are really focused on what they're doing. And so I like the emotion. I like the feeling that's evoked here, but it's not just enough to have that. I think what really makes this image work is the composition in terms of how the photographer here uses the reflection. Because at first, when I took a look at the image, it took me a moment to read it, and then I noticed that this guy here this is a mirror here reflecting this guy's face here, and then we have this fellow here with the bald head, whose face is slightly reflected here on this little piece of glass there. And it added a complexity to the image that I found really, really fascinating. We were seeing all these different sides, all the different characters that are playing a role in this scene, and it made for a really interesting image. On top of that, I love how the image derives some really strong visual strength from the framing that it uses throughout the scene. I mean, the obvious framing here in this window is of this person being photographed, having his hair cut here. But the framing is happening here within the doorway. It's even happening in the mirrors themselves. The mirrors themselves are actually framing like almost separate mini shots of what's happening within that scene, which I really, really like. The lighting here is not great. It seems to be like an overhead fluorescent light. There's a slight greenish cast to it, but that isn't particularly bothersome at all. One of the other things that I like is also the multiple gestures. There's the gesture of this boy as he's sort of clasping his arm, and I like the gesture as well of this guy using the scissors to trim this guy's hair. And though we don't get a full view of this guy's shears, that's what he's doing here. I just like how everyone is sort of connected to each other. I mean, this eye line goes to here, it goes to here, and it allows us to flow the image really, really nicely. But rather than just being a shot of someone getting their hair cut, there is a dynamic, an emotional dynamic that's happening in this scene, which is really, really interesting. Granted, it's not happening on the street. Literally, it's happening within a barbershop, but I still think this qualifies as a street photograph, and I think it's a lovely one at that. All right, here we have a shot by Castro. We have no XF data here. So this is an image that really just arrested my attention almost immediately because I'm trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. We have this gesture, this connection between these two people. The man's left hand is on this woman's wrist, and then he is opening up his right eye with his right hand, and then she seems to have her left hand on her phone or something. So from what I can read of this, it seems as if the guy had something in his eye and she was helping him trying to get it out. I mean, that's as much as I can figure out from taking a look at this photograph. But I love the intimacy of this moment, even though I don't completely understand exactly what's happening. But I think I'm pretty close to reading what this scene is. This basically this preening of one person of another is such an intimate moment that normally happens within the context of someone's home, right? This sort of physical contact, this sort of genuine tenderness or caring for what's happening with someone else's physicality is something that doesn't often happen in public besides, parents with their own kids. It's kind of rare to see two adults sort of doing that. But it makes for a really interesting photograph, especially in the street, because you can see here, it looks like we're in New York City. There's a lot of stuff in the background. We have the cars, we have the cabs, we have the people walking away, we have the banners, we have the signage, we have all that stuff. But you can see how our eyes just gravitate to the gesture. And I love how the arm here creates this triangle here. There's just a connection here that despite all the busyness that's happening here, our eyes just always return to this person here. It's also helped by the implied diagonal lines that we see here. So you can see it's going off to this vanishing point off in the distance, but because of the color saturation of their clothes, the fact that they both are the sharpest element in the frame, all of those things play a role in how we experience the image. Because even though our eyes may go exploring other areas of the frame, we come straight here. And I think it really helps that these are the only faces that we really get any clear definition of, and our eyes are always drawn to people's faces. So I think it's really helpful here that it's just these two people here who we gravitate to. I think it really is a sort of interesting shot, but a very difficult shot to get, not only because Eric here is pretty close to the subjects. It looks like he's using either a 25 or a 28 millimeter lens and is fairly close to these people. So a lot of people are intimidated at the idea of making a photograph this close, particularly of two people that are being, intimate in this particular way. You don't want to intrude in a person's space, but man, this really pays off by braving it and getting in close and making the shot, because this shot would feel completely different if it were shot with a 70 to 200 at a distance away. There's something to be said about the fact of going wide and going close, and it's a marvelous moment to have captured. Next, we have a shot by Gisele Duprez. This was created with a Sony 7 Mark II, and this was at 1/800th of a second, f5, ISO 100. So here we have these kids that are dancing, and it's just a really neat shot because you get these kids that are fully into moving to the music. You have this girl here who's swinging her great hair on the left-hand side of the frame. You got this kid over here who's really busting a move in the foreground. And then you have these people in the background that are sort of enjoying him, especially this woman here who has this really big smile on her face. There's another woman here who's holding another kid that seems completely exhausted. But this moment has so much emotion, so much energy to it, and I really love the shot. This was taken at a boardwalk at a beach, and the beaches are really great places to go and photograph people, because unlike a city street where people are just walking up and down the street, at beaches or carnivals or things like that, people are actively doing things. They're dancing, they're playing games, they're running, they're exercising. And that kind of stuff I'm increasingly finding is far more interesting material for a street photographer rather than shooting yet another person walking down the street with their face lost in a cell phone. Trying to find situations where people are being human, where they're being active, where they're interacting, where they're reacting to things, I think is much greater fodder for a really, really good street photograph. And it challenges the photographer because, those moments can be very elusive. And granted, at the beach, stuff like that is always happening, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to recognize its potential for a photograph. And Gisele here certainly does, because she makes a conscious choice to drop down and shoot up at these kids rather than shooting down at them. Because that creates not only a level of intimacy, but we really feel immersed in the composition in a way that wouldn't happen if she was, shooting from eye level and shooting down at the kids. The proximity of the camera to the kids and the upward angle at which she shoots it from really makes this image have its emotional impact, and the inclusion of the people in the background and their reaction to everything really plays an important role in this really nicely layered composition. So kudos, Gisele. This is a wonderful, wonderful shot. Well, thanks to everyone for submitting images to the Flickr Pool. But if you want to study with me, I'm going to be doing a series of workshops, one in Paris, one in New York. But the one I'm really excited about, and we're taking signups for now, is for a workshop in New Orleans, the Big Easy. And we're going to be there in October. It's going to be 4 days of just fantastic photography. I really love this city. I'm really excited at going back there. So if you're interested in joining me down there, you can go to the Los Angeles Center of Photography and sign up today. I'll have a link below here in the notes here, so you can sign up and join me. It's going to be a fantastic time with wonderful photographic opportunities, great music, even better food. If you've never been down there to New Orleans, this is the perfect excuse to finally get down there and really have some fun and make some really great photographs. And if you've never heard of the Candid Frame is a podcast in which I conduct interviews with photographers from all over the world of various genres. And you can check it out by going to thecandidframe.com. We produce an interview every week, as well as I write reviews on different things, including a recent book by Alex and Rebecca Norris Webb of their street photography. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. It's more an exploration of their relationship and a little bit of poetry to go along with it. If you're not familiar with their work, this is a great book to start your experience of two photographers who are really, really exceptional. And check it out by going to thecandidframe.com or download the free Candid Frame app, and there'll be a link for that in the show notes for the episode or on the Candid Frame website. So check it out. And if you want to submit images to the Candid Frame Flickr Pool, all you have to do is do a search on Flickr for the Candid Frame, and it will take you to this page, and all you have to do is ask to be added. You'll have to do it on your computer, though, because if you try to do it on your phone or your tablet, you're going to get a notification that it's a private group and you can't enter it. For whatever reason, you can't do it on your phone or tablet. Hopefully, this is something that will eventually get resolved. But in any case, just go on your computer to Flickr, do a search on the Candid Frame and ask to be added, and I'll be more than glad to do so. So thanks again for joining me, and I will see you next time.